Yeah, we don't want to have a lot of flies. If you're quite low, it's 24 minutes. Yeah.
Kia ora koutou katoa, and welcome back to this reconvened council meeting from the 19th of October, being held on the 26th of October. We have for this meeting apologies from the Mayor, Dr. Nick Smith, Councillors Benj and Councillor Rainey for departing early, who is live streaming in. We are kicking off today with the I will put those apologies. Moved Councillor Courtney, seconded Councillor Brand. I will put those apologies. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. That motion is carried. Are there any updates to the interest register for this meeting? Wonderful. Order of business, we'll be doing the two AMPs, then ended cricket, then confidential agenda. So we are kicking off with the draft solid waste activity management plan 2024 to 2034, lovingly called the swamp.
Thank you through the chair. I have Terry Dwyer and Mark McFarlane who will be presenting the report, and I'll hand over to them. Thank you. Kia ora koutou katoa. I'm Terry Dwyer. I'd like to present the Solid Waste Activity Management Plan. I'll take the report as read and happy to take any questions, but I would just like to clarify that this is for activities outside of York Valley Landfill, and it's nothing to do with the Landfill Business Unit or the Landfill Sewage Business Unit. Thank you.
We are open for questions. Councillor Sampson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through the chair. Kia ora koutou. Thanks very much for the AMP. Yeah, really appreciate that. Lots of great work in there. Just a couple of questions which I sent through in advance. Does Nelson City Council have an ETS policy on the use of forest sequestration credits to offset landfill NZU liabilities?
Through the chair, that would be a landfill question, as solid waste doesn't have any part of that. And through the chair.
Sorry, just did you say that solid waste doesn't have a policy around that?
Solid waste does not have anything to do with the landfill or the ETS.
Okay, thanks. Oops. Okay.
Any further questions? Seeing none, unless you're looking at me confused, Councillor Sampson.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit confused because If it doesn't have anything to do with landfill, what does solid waste do? I mean, I've read the AMP, but now I'm confused.
Through the chair, the solid waste runs the closed Edify landfill, the recycling service, the CBD and curbside street refuse service for tilt bins, outside dairies and that kind of stuff. It works with waste minimisation, but basically the responsibility stops at the weighbridge for the landfill.
And is that because NCC and TDC have like co-responsibility for the landfill? So that's kind of keeping that simple by having them separated.
Through the chair, I believe the activities of solid waste are quite different from the ambitions of the landfill, so that would really be a landfill question.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Rohan. Just correct me if I'm reading it right, because there's probably potentially a question around that. Just reading through the financials, there's sort of over the 10 years, sometimes about a 400K surplus in the account up to about $2 million. Is that kind of to build up reserves and to provide opportunities to do things if we have enough of a reserve? Or could you explain if I'm reading that correctly and what that would be for?
Through the chair, the solid waste department operates as a closed account. So we gain money from gate fees, the landfill, central government funds, the waste levy from the landfill, and that goes into a closed account from which we run our activities. Hence, each year we require money from the landfill, which is called the local disposal levy, and that's part of our funding. This means that we never draw on rates and we never basically put money into rates. So if there is profit at the end, we effectively, that goes into a reserve, and that has been used to fund future activities and any overspends. For example, when we have the recycling subsidy for the collapse of commodity prices, we use reserves to cover that cost.
Any further questions on this AMP? See none, I'll look for someone to move. Councillor Rollo, someone to second. Councillor Stallard. A huge thank you to staff for their work on this. I will put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, that motion is carried. We roll on through to the draft environmental management activity management plan. Double management in that one. Welcome Mandy and her team to the stage.
Morena koutou. So just want to acknowledge the work Michelle has put into this draft AMP. She was the main contributor to this, so thank you. As stated in the draft AMP, a lot of the activities we do are legislated in the environmental management group, but of course with a change of government, that legislation has now got question marks all over it. But I'll hand over to Michelle to add anything you want to say.
Thanks, Mandy. No, nothing to add. Hopefully you've had a chance to read the AMP. And so the rest of the team are here and happy to take questions.
I'll open for questions on this AMP. Councillor Sampson.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor, through the chair. Kia ora koutou, thanks very much for your work on this AMP. It was really great to read this, heaps of work, and just to see the breadth of work that the team covers. I sent my questions through, and they're really in kind of two areas, one to do with commercial forestry and the other to do with the CAT management bylaw. So on page 58, key national policies and standards, the NESP, plantation forestry has now been superseded by the NES commercial forestry, which comes into effect on the 2nd of November. So I'm just wondering if the AMP can be updated to refer to the new NES CF, so replacing reference to the plantation forestry.
Yeah, just respond to that through the chair that yes, we will update that. Yeah.
Great, thanks. And then I note in the new NESCF, it states the changes give councils more power to decide where new forests are located. The changes mean that the same regulations apply to both plantation forests and carbon forests, and the environmental effects of large-scale forestry on the environment, communities, and rural economies are well managed. So my question really is on page 3 under monitoring, there's no reference to forestry monitoring in the AMP. And I just wanted to know, do we do forestry monitoring? And why is there no reference to this in the AMP?
Through the chair. So yes, we in the AMP there is mentioned that and there is a level of service that all required monitoring is undertaken. So we both do permitted activity monitoring as well as consent monitoring. We can make that a bit more clear, but we don't identify all the activities that we specifically monitor because there's quite a few, and I don't see a need to I single out just forestry, but I will make sure that we do reference that we undertake monitoring. Absolutely.
So I guess at a governance level, it's a really a matter, I would say, of some significance in light of events that happened here through our weather events, and obviously on the SK, and that this piece of legislation has been, or the NESCF has been strengthened significantly. So I'm asking if it's possible to include reference to monitoring of commercial forestry in the AMP.
So through the chair, we could give an example of our monitoring activities, which that could be one. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And so I've probably got some wording around noting that the draft environmental activity management plan will be updated to include reference to monitoring of commercial forestry, if that's possible to include. And then in terms of the cat management, page 3 refers to undertaking biosecurity, pest management responsibilities and control work and maintaining Indigenous biological diversity, but there's no mention of feral or pest cat control. And I think on the 2nd of November, during workshop, elected members gave really clear direction to action work in this space in terms of developing a bylaw. And so I was just wondering why there's no reference to this in the AMP.
So through the chair, yes, there was that direction given. That's acknowledged. Soon after that happened, we found out that there was something happening in the national space, that they were progressing with potentially some national legislation. So it would be premature to kick off a bylaw if national legislation was actually going to happen. But of course, since that time, we've had a change of government. So yeah, that's something that once we understand what's on the national agenda, we can certainly revisit bringing a bylaw.
Thanks. Respectfully, but the spectre of national bylaw was discussed in the workshop, and elected members still gave direction that we wanted to proceed on developing a local cat management bylaw. And there was specific discussion around not wanting to wait for national direction because it can take so many years. So I've sent through some wording around a possible amendment to that, and I'm just wondering through the chair how I've got this proposed wording that staff bring back options for consulting on a cat management bylaw through the long-term plan. And if it's kind of recorded in the minutes of the meeting around that commercial forestry monitoring being included in the AMP. I don't need another specific amendment on that. I'm comfortable with the inclusion of the word amended, but I would like to move the recommendations with this amendment, if that's possible.
The amended recommendations have been moved. Is there someone to second? Councillor Stallard has seconded those. I will just pass to staff for any advice on this.
Yeah, I mean, I do acknowledge that direction was absolutely given, but there was something else that happened after that meeting, which did indicate that instead of nothing happening, there was actually something happening. But yeah, of course, that's more than likely to stall. So yeah, I understand the situation.
Is staff comfortable with that? I think I don't want to make, I don't want to put you in an uncomfortable position, but I think, we've given really clear governance direction, and I just want to really strengthen that through this.
Yeah, so through the chair, the CAT management or control is happening through the pest management strategy to an extent, but that's not the same as the bylaw. But that is one aspect that is underway.
Any further questions, Councillor Sanson? Councillor, are you good? Any other questions on this item? Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Rohan. Mandy, I thought our decision was on the subject that it would go out to the pest management, regional pest management committee to deal with. And that's how it was left. Are you telling us that that has been picked up by them?
That is, through the chair, that is happening now. So yes, it is going through alterations to the management strategy is happening right now. So it'll be at the next joint committee meeting, I understand. So that is happening, but also a bylaw was discussed and council did give direction that they wanted to see options for potentially having a cat bylaw.
Any further questions? Councillor Brand.
Thank you, through the acting mayor. So CAG have stated that nationally, even though we've just had a change of government, that was on the table to be looked at around the cat management. Does that addition up there need to stipulate factoring in what central government policy may or may not direct to ensure that we're not creating a whole heap of work that's going to be superseded by something else?
Yeah, through the chair, that's exactly what we prefer to happen. Is we understand what is on the national agenda on this topic, if anything, before we proceed down the pathway.
So then, through the chair, do we need to, if the owner of the amendment is open to it, do we need to put reference there to the central government national policy statement, whatever they're going to be making regarding that, to be included in the options or noted or something? They're not about wasting money and wasting time on something that may be superseded.
And just adding to that, through the chair, to be bringing back options for a bylaw that would be ready for consultation through the long-term plan just is not realistic. The time frame to get a bylaw, options around a bylaw, and then if the decision is to proceed with a bylaw, to get that ready through the long-term plan, the time frame is too short for that as well.
Councillor Sanson.
If the governance direction had been picked up on the 2nd of May when it was given, would that have been sufficient time to bring back options, given that that was the governance direction given by 3/4, I think, of the governance table on that day?
it would have been possible to bring a report back about options, but potentially not have the bylaw ready to be consulted through the long-term plan. What is there?
So is there a realistic date by which we could have a report back? Like I would be comfortable consulting on a cap management bylaw and give a certain date, like this financial year or something like that.
Can I ask a question of clarification just around the wording of consulting on a cap management bylaw? Is the intention that you're seeking options on consulting on the concept of a cap management bylaw through the long-term plan, or consulting on a developed cap management bylaw through the bylaw legislation?
So I think that the governance table has given really clear direction that we want to see options for a cap management bylaw. So I don't want this to drag on, and I think that I'm not quite sure what we need to do at the governance table. If we almost had a majority, a unanimous almost, give that direction, there's been no action taken on it. So I am open to suggestions from the staff as to what is suitable, but I don't want this just to kind of disappear. It's a really important matter.
Can I just in terms of the clarification, the original wording is around consulting on the bylaw itself, or on the having developed, consulting then on a bylaw itself is what the resolution is seeking to do today. So on the bylaw itself to be consulted through the RTP.
Well, I think what we really want is to be consulting with the public on a cap management bylaw. That was the governance direction given, and so we need some timing around when that is going to be feasible.
Thanks for the clarification.
Through the chair, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was that the pest management committee were going to be looking at the possibility of a joint bylaw between the two councils, because I've spoken to my opposite number and they were working up a potential bylaw and said, well, we should make sure that they're the same thing. Is that not
I'm on that committee. I can give some response when the staff want to.
I wouldn't want to create a bylaw here and have a different bylaw over there. It would seem to be sensible to have a joint bylaw, and I understand the pest management committee is the right place to do that.
Yes, so through the chair, in the past, Tasman have put up the option of having a bylaw, and that didn't gain support. But there is support for cat control and management through the pest management strategy. So that conversation is going to happen next joint committee meeting. Yeah, 14th November. Yeah.
Is it a question or a response, Councillor Sampson?
It's a comment in relation to that.
I'll get through with Councillor Paki. We do still have some other questions around.
Mr. Chair, I've got a new question to ask, just because we're talking about timeframes. Can you give me an indication on what sort of timeframes you're looking at? Like, so let's just say that the government just simply rolled on and picked up, the new government picked up what the proposals were beforehand and what our process, what's the, how elongated are they in terms of actual time in your experience? Give me some numbers, random.
So if national legislation was proposed, that process takes at least a year, I would, suggest, if not longer, depending on the priority list. So
just clarify that, I think through the chair, I'm just looking at if the two processes were running side by side, are we going to gain a lot from, that's a suggestion, but is it like a 2-month difference, or is it a 12-month difference, or a 2-year difference? This is the bit that I'm not too certain about.
Yeah, to propose a bylaw, you have to have evidence that there's something that you need to have a bylaw be instigated. So it's gathering that evidence in the first place.
Yeah, so less about what we have to do, but more about, let's just say that the wheels turned and we were able to deliver the bylaw versus the central government change of legislation, whereas the just trying to get a gauge, because if we're going to spend a lot of money and it's the difference of 12 months, and it's still going to go through anyway, then I can see the wisdom in when the expectation was that central government would take that over. That's a sensible pathway. But if it's, I'm just so randomly without knowing, could it be a 5-year difference?
It would certainly take at least 10 months, plus, staff time, which haven't allocated for that particular topic. So if we were to run them side by side, I don't know there would be much benefit, because the bylaw might not be needed.
That's cool. It's good through the chair. It's good clarification, because it was a bit ambiguous about, we're talking timeframes and what scale those timeframes were. Is quite good to consider.
Any further questions? Councillor Skinner?
It's just been clear, we going to take that separately, that amendment, or are you going to move it as a whole?
If you request to take the resolutions in parts, we can do so.
Yes, so I'd like to see that separately.
Wonderful, that will be done. The sense I'm getting is that there's appetite to get the wording right on this one, so I am just going to take a 2-minute adjournment to give the mover and seconder time to get the wording to a good point.
Cool.
All right, we will reconvene the council meeting. We have some updated wording from the mover and seconder. I will just test with the meeting. This is the joy, a standing order we never apply, but is there agreement or any opposition in accepting the change of wording to the moved and seconded resolutions? Being none, that is good to go. All right, we will now move in to debate on this resolution, it having been moved and seconded. Thank the staff for their great presentation and hard work on this AMP. As mover, I will kick it off with Councillor Sampson.
Thanks very much through the chair. Yeah, I think I just want to say, first of all, a massive thanks to the staff for the really valuable work that they do in the activity, the environmental management space. In terms of the amendment that I've proposed, being on the Joint Regional Pest Management Strategy Subcommittee, we have discussed the importance of having a kind of a multi-pronged approach to cat management and reducing harm to Indigenous fauna in particular. The Regional Pest Management Strategy is really specific and only targeted particularly at like some conservation areas and that kind of thing, whereas a cat management bylaw, as has already been adopted by many councils around the country and is advocated for by SPCA. We had, I think, the regional representative for SPCA in here, as well as other groups involved with both cat welfare and with environmental, improving environmental and Indigenous biodiversity outcomes, advocating that we consider adopting a cat management bylaw. So I think it's really important that we don't drop the ball on this, and I look forward to staff coming back with options for us to consult with the community or for a bylaw, and then to ask the community whether they think it's important or not. Thanks.
Further debate? Councillor Skinner.
Thank you. That must have been the reason why I'm wearing my advertising shirt on wild cats, panthers on there. Yeah, I mean, the time and place, and I'm a big lover of cats, but fully understand when they get in the wrong places, where they shouldn't be. Obviously helped with the pest control and the pylorus of the bat there, and you capture the odd cat who shouldn't be there. But this is not the AMP to be doing this. I think if it's something you want to push, we've pushed it. It's been pushed in the past, and by all means, if you're on the Regional Pest Management Committee, that's something to bring forward from those. We don't have a cat problem in Nelson. TDC are in a bit of a different situation. But no, I support the activity management plan, environmental plan. Obviously, it's not going to please everybody in there, but bringing this in last minute on a new sort of bylaw, consulting on it's not the place or time. We've been through this before, so I can't support number 4. Thank you. And the other real reasoning behind that, we're just putting a more workload to the staff for something. We've got more important stuff to do, and we're very resource tight at the moment. And the staff have heard and have acted on our presentations on this topic before, but this is not the one to add another layer of work. We're going out. Thanks.
Councillor Rollo, then Councillor Stella.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Mayor Rohan. Look, excellent activity management plan that we've got there, but I must say the elephant in the room, or the cat in the room, is certainly the idea of consulting on a a cat management plan. And the question I always get from people is, why does Nelson City Council give funding to organisations that are wanting to bring wildlife and nature back to our region? Yet you can take your cat straight to that place and it can do what it like. And I guess that's the question that council simply can't answer. And I think it's about time in the year 2023 that council showed some leadership and said, actually, we want to do something about this. And seeing some options come forward on what we can do in this space is an excellent thing. And I always love the conversation, well, we must wait to see what the national policy is going to do, because I think it's about time Nelson City Council actually took some lead on something we want to do on our region. And I'm fully supportive of us bringing some options back in. Long may they be good for our region.
Councillor Stallard.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. A cat problem exists anywhere with cats near wilderness areas, the areas where you're trying to re-establish biodiversity. That was made clear with Councillor Sansom and I on the Regional Pest Management Plan Review Committee. It was also made clear by experts presenting to that committee that to have a meaningful strategy to address the problem of pest and feral cats requires the complementary workings of both, including them in the plan and then having bylaws, and either one on its own would not be so effective. So that's why we have this before us today. Thank you.
I'll take my opportunity, which is just to say, in terms of the process from the 2022 resolution requesting further work on this through to a workshop in which there was a clear preference expressed for continuing to explore this. I think it's a logical next step in addressing a problem that has been raised repeatedly with us. And I look forward to seeing what the options are and how we can progress common sense rulemaking to ensure the safety and security of our beautiful native biodiversity, whilst also looking after our dear friendly cat companions. Any further debate? Otherwise, I will pass to Councillor Sansom for her right of reply. Seeing none, Councillor Sansom, would you like to exercise your right of reply?
No, I'm comfortable. Thanks very much.
All right, I've had a request for the resolutions to be taken in part. I will take resolutions 1, 2, and 3 together unless there is any objection. I will now put resolutions 1, 2, and 3. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Those resolutions are carried. I will now put resolution 4. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Aye.
That resolution is carried. All right, that brings us to the end of the draft environmental management activity management plan, and brings us on to the item of New Zealand Cricket exemption to Saxon Field Reserve Management Plan sponsorship policy report back. I am going to take a 5-minute adjournment so that I can finish drafting up the chairperson's recommendations on this item. So we'll be back at 10:45.
Yes.
Kia ora koutou katoa, and welcome back to this episode of Nelson City Council. We're on to the New Zealand Cricket exemption to Saxton Field Reserve Management Plan sponsorship policy. Welcome back, Andrew and Andrew, to the table to present their update report.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Rohan. As requested by Council last week, the Chief Executive has gone away and done some further engagement with Central Districts Cricket around possibilities. And we have a short update for you today, which Mr. Petheram will present.
Thank you, Councillors, Deputy Mayor. So, as part of the report pack process, you'll note that in the recommendation, and I'm assuming that I'm taking the report as read, and I assume that you've read it. In the recommendation, number 3 is that we will continue to engage with Central Districts Cricket. We've been having discussions with them this week. Their key personnel are travelling back from India yesterday and today, and we hope to get some more news tomorrow. It's positive. I think the key thing really is that the Asahi are only one of 12 of the commercial sponsors, and as such the advertising will be shared amongst all 12 sponsors. So what we're trying to do is to minimise the amount of wording for Asahi on council structures, and trying to reduce that impact on the local people. We've had response back from the Nelson Regional Development Agency, and there's quite a few activities which have been planned that we weren't aware of previously. One of them is the development of a multicultural cricket festival by Nelson Cricket, and that will be held on the day before the event. They're also looking at either a city or a beach activation event promoting the games. And also Nelson Cricket had plans to run a female-only, woman-only community program and games in the lead up to the 2 White Ferns games. Also, the feedback that we've had from the accommodation industry is that it's rather late in the process to prevent the games from occurring if that's what the result is. And Trailways, for example, have expressed concern about the loss of accommodation that this could result in. So, in conclusion, approving Asahi as one of New Zealand cricket sponsors this summer, it would ensure the games proceeded, and would enable the 2 councils time to negotiate future terms for sponsorship for events at Saxton Field. So that's quite critical. It would give us time next year and following to negotiate terms that are more favourable to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew and Andrew. I will just note that under Standing Order 9.5, that I have a chairperson's recommendation on this item, which in effect is broadly the same, but the reason for it being, I think it better captures the desired outcomes that I've heard from this council and around the council table in the previous debate, and in the ensuing discussions that have occurred. That is just to note that at this point. I'll open for questions to officers now. Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Rohan. Through you to Officer Petheram. Andrew, were New Zealand Cricket not aware of our policy in respect of alcohol advertising?
Deputy Mayor, councillors, it's not clear. We believe that Central Districts were aware. Whether they'd passed that information on to New Zealand Cricket or not, we don't know.
Right, and also following on from that, if you allow me, what about the Nelson Regional Development Agency? Were they aware of the policy?
Actually, I'll jump in here because I've been having rather than through Andrew, I've been having those conversations. So look, no, I don't think any parties in this were aware of this problem. It's unfortunate we've got to where we are, but I think people have got into this in good faith. The issue came up, I think, arose around 2 or 3 weeks ago, and people realised this was a problem. But I'm assured, absolutely, New Zealand Cricket were not aware of this and didn't see this as a problem. And had they known that when we negotiated, we would have negotiated differently, Councillor Courtney. So look, I don't think anybody here, nobody's done anything deliberate here. There's genuine. I hadn't realised that the policy had changed in 2021, and that's where we got to this unfortunate situation now.
Thank you very much for that, because you both answered the same question, and that's good. And I don't for a moment think there is anyone doing anything untoward. Not my intention in answering the question, but I just wondered about the Nelson Regional Development Agency, though, whether they, had a responsibility to inform New Zealand Cricket and, in preparing the contract, that this was a part of it. Have you a comment on that?
I don't think it's something that the NRDA really would have taken into account. I mean, they really give us advice on the financial advantages to the region, and they probably didn't delve in as deeply as that. So they probably weren't aware either.
Who does the contract? Is it NRDA?
It's NRDA.
Yeah. Thank you.
Further questions for officers? Councillor Stallard.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Based on the communications we've had in the past week, and so there seems to be some confusion about who decides on the locations of these games. So I wanted just to clarify, who is responsible for deciding on the locations of international cricket games in New Zealand? Is it in New Zealand Cricket, CD Cricket, or indeed is it Nelson City Council?
At the end of the day, it's New Zealand Cricket, and we make submissions through central districts to New Zealand Cricket for games, and it's extremely competitive, and we have to put up a good case to bring them to Saxon Field.
And I should say I have a number of questions, if I could just take them one at a time. Thank you. So given that New Zealand Cricket will make a decision around the locations of matches, including around whether these games of interest will take place in Nelson or elsewhere, I wonder if we could have a summary of progress made in discussions with New Zealand Cricket over the past 7 days since the last council meeting.
I'll take that, since I've been having the conversations. Look, the Cricket World Cup in India has complicated this issue. I've been dealing extremely constructively with Lance, the CE of Central District Cricket, and they fully respect the issue, the conversation that we're having around the issue of alcohol advertising. It's been really difficult at a time of New Zealand Cricket doing extremely well in the World Cup, and they have rightly not wanted to disturb the CE and the GM commercial at the time. They're heading back now. We've got arrangements to discuss this tomorrow. Lance is extremely confident that we're going to have a good conversation, and that we're going to, in good faith, get a good resolution to this space and move us forward.
So just to clarify, if I may, we had no direct discussion with New Zealand Cricket on the issue in the past 7 days, and CD Cricket have not taken a decision to discuss the issue with New Zealand Cricket.
Correct.
So having read today's report, I just wonder, in the interests of assisting councils to make an informed decision, I mean, you touched on this briefly, but I wonder if you could let us know what you see as the key pieces of new information in this report that were not made available in last week's report regarding this issue.
I think there are two, and the first one being the degree of sponsorship. I think previously we had given the impression that Asahi were the #1 sponsor, when in fact they're one of 12. The three main sponsors, I think, what do I have here? ANZ, SENS and sorry, I haven't got that there. But it wasn't ANZ, TVNZ and SENS. And so Asahi are only one of 12. The other new information probably relates to the feedback that we've had from NRDA as to the impact on the community and all the additional benefits that would arise from the games.
Thank you. If I may continue through the chair, we were told last week very clearly that New Zealand Cricket had the position that unless in-ground alcohol advertising at a family-friendly event was enabled, they would pull the games. Is that still their position?
I'll answer that. No, it's not New Zealand Cricket's position that they will pull the games, but it is in conversations with central districts and others. I understand it is extremely expensive to put on regional games, so anything that makes it difficult, then actually New Zealand Cricket might say, actually, we do want to pull back. So my assessment, having had good chats with Cricket and others like Grant Elliott, who will be commentating at the thing, is actually, if we make this difficult in any way, then there's a possibility that it may not happen. And indeed, the contract hasn't yet been signed. So no, New Zealand Cricket have not threatened to pull the games, but there are others. As Andrew has said, this is extremely competitive, and other areas that don't have such alcohol restrictions on their grounds could well take it. And so it's my assessment that if we make it at all difficult, then they would potentially pull the games. But New Zealand Cricket have made no such statement.
If I may explore that further through the Mayor, my recollection of the report last week, it was quite clear. If there was no exemptions, the games would not go ahead in Nelson. Am I wrong in that recollection?
Well, they needed the exemption for Central District Cricket to sign the contract with NRDA because of the fact that effectively when we give over a contract, so the grounds for the day are handed over to New Zealand Cricket, and as part of those, that one of the 12 sponsors is an alcohol sponsor. So actually, in order to sign that contract, New Zealand Central District had to have the exemption from both councils. Tasman is discussing that exemption right now, and I'm led to believe, but we'll see where that goes, is that they will be signing off on that exemption, and we're looking for that same exemption here. So yes, if last week the games would not have gone ahead if we didn't get that exemption.
Thank you. I'll take that as meaning there's been no change in that position. The resolution last week, our staff worked with CD Cricket on alternative options. Do we have any alternative options on the table today?
No, as I've explained, the key person I need to speak to is CE of New Zealand Cricket and GM Commercial, who is literally, as we speak, on a plane coming back from India. So those conversations haven't happened. Having said that, I've had good discussions with Lance, and his team have been thinking about what those might be. But I need to sit down with those key players to progress this conversation with New Zealand Cricket, who have been focusing on a Cricket World Cup right now.
Thank you. And one last question, if I may. We've been asked in the report and verbally to approve Asahi Beverages as one of New Zealand Cricket sponsors this summer. I do question that wording. Is that really what we're being asked to do today? Because I'd hesitate to approve any of their sponsors. That's their business. Surely we are being asked to consider where an exemption to our alcohol advertising policy at Saxton Field. I wonder if we could just get some clarity around that.
I can clarify, which is that both the updated staff recommendation and the chairperson's recommendation speak only to the exemption. That is one of the key changes from last week as well.
Thank you.
Further questions for staff? Councillor Roller.
I'm happy to move your recommendation if you're ready for that.
I will second it. Thank you. Councillor Sampson, a question?
Yeah, just I'm wondering the $80,000 that Nelson City Council committed to this, is that going to one of the cricket organisations? Is it going to Central Districts or to New Zealand Cricket? or is it kind of, I don't know, used towards improvements at Saxon Field? If you could just remind us what the
Andrew?
80,000 was for.
Deputy Mayor, Councillor, it's my understanding that goes towards the costs of holding the games in Nelson. So it will go through Nelson Cricket, and as the group that manages the actual activities.
So the $80,000 gets paid to Nelson Cricket.
Yes, it's expensive.
The contract is with NRDA and Central District, so they're managing it. But the 80,000 does. It's very expensive to put on these events, and so that 80,000 is going towards the cost. But I have to say there is concern amongst cricket around. Will they get? Is this going to be
a minor clarification from me, which is just in terms of the approval process? It's the NRDA Events Fund which are crossed the threshold to come back to us as shareholders to approve, but not a direct council contribution.
Yeah, no, that's right. But I'm just wanting to understand if that is with Central Districts, if it's the same arrangement, or is it with a different party? Like it sounds like it's with the local cricket association.
The contract is with NRDA and Central Districts.
Okay.
Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Rohan. I just wonder how receptive your frame of mind is at the moment. I'm looking at 3 seeking direct staff to continue engagement with Central Districts Cricket, New Zealand Cricket, to reach an appropriate agreement on alcohol advertising. I was wondering about non-dominating alcohol advertising. Would you indulge me with that inclusion, or are you not in that?
I am
just to soften the alcohol advertising to non-dominating.
The one thing I'd note is that the alcohol advertising and promotion code will already be requiring that. So I think it would be superfluous to the resolution itself. So whilst I have a fondness for your suggestion, Councillor Courtney, I think the wording there clearly states a preference to give an indication to staff on what is appropriate. All right. If there are any final questions, speak now or forever hold your peace. Councillor Rainey, I've forgotten you. Rain Man.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Can staff please remind me who the contract is being signed, who the parties to the contract, which I understand hasn't been signed yet. The parties are NRDA and New Zealand Cricket.
No, so the contract is being signed between NRDA and Central District.
Councillor Rainey, are you referring to the contract for lease of the grounds?
I'm not sure. We keep on being told about the contract for the games to go ahead hasn't been signed yet. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, so. There's just so look, obviously, so Central Districts are the group organising this. So they're signing the contract, and that involves discussions with New Zealand Cricket and NRDA and others just to get that over the line.
So in that respect, then Central Districts Cricket aren't in a position to be able to have a position regarding the alcohol policy because the chief executive of New Zealand Cricket isn't in the country. How are they then able to go ahead and sign the contract?
I've had discussions with Central District, and so if they get an approval from both councils to give an exemption, then he is in a position to sign the contract to deliver the games.
But surely this is a point of negotiation. Why aren't we negotiating on this point with Central Districts subsequent to their discussion with New Zealand Cricket?
I'll take that, Councillor Rainey, to say that those negotiations have been ongoing and that the resolutions request that those negotiations further continue.
Okay, so subsequent question, do any other regional cricket fields have the same policy. Is this an issue that's come up in any other areas of New Zealand?
Deputy Mayor, we and councillors, we've asked that question, and no, at this stage, we're the only one.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we will move into debate. Councillor Rollo as mover, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, I will. And thank you, Deputy Mayor and Chief Executive, for the work you've done in the past week. I know you're both now eager cricket fans and can't wait to represent the Black Caps one day, and probably at Sexton's Oval, I'm sure. Look, I think we gave some good direction last week after some thorough debate amongst us all, which was extremely constructive on what we want to see sport in New Zealand, but most importantly in our region do. And I think the amendment that Councillor Paki put up last week, allowing and Councillor Courtney, yes, I've got that, to allow that to allow the staff to engage. I think you've done an extremely good job, and probably some trying circumstances, knowing that some of the organisation are trying to win a World Cup over in India at the moment, and I'm supportive of this. I think we need to send a clear message to the community that actually we do want to see cricket happen here. We may not be the biggest fans of alcohol, but actually let's make the draw card on the day. New Zealand, the Black Caps and the White Ferns representing New Zealand, Aotearoa and also Nelson, and long may this go through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rollo. As seconder, I'll take my
Can I signal a division for us?
You may. Look, I want to start just with some opening comments by saying, having engaged with the Chief Executive, I really want to acknowledge his work on this. This has been a constructive process, working with our partners to both bring international sporting matches here, but also uphold our values in the kaupapa that we've signed up to as a council. We have a commitment that as part of this, we do want to review the process that's happened to date to avoid similar complications into the future. I think that we've taken the correct approach as a council, and I similarly want to acknowledge Councillor Paki and Courtney for moving the resolution last week to continue to engage here. This is about having a common sense conversation, acknowledging the harm that alcohol does in our community, whilst also remaining open to those sporting opportunities. It is a fact that across the sporting ecosystem, alcohol advertising and sponsorship is incredibly tightly woven into it. And it's something that there is a national conversation opening up around that. And I think that we've contributed to that dialogue. In terms of the resolutions in front of us today, this is just another step in the conversation that we're having. And again, it is that conversation in partnership with Cricket New Zealand and central districts to get to an outcome that works for everyone. One of the things that provides me with comfort is things like the Alcohol Advertising and Promotion Code that does really stress the importance of harm minimisation and keeping alcohol advertising away from our vulnerable communities, our young people. Look, is this the perfect situation to be in? No, but we've worked through this on a practical basis, and I think we've got to an outcome that can help us move forward. And it does require a wider conversation as we head forward, not just in this region, but across the country. And I think that that's one that we can and should engage in on a proactive basis without fearing the implications, because if anything, this has shown that we can have that dialogue, we can have that engagement, and we can get better outcomes as a result of it. Councillor Sampson.
Just could we take it in parts, just with number 2 separate to the others? Thanks.
Councillor Brand.
Thank you, through the chair. I appreciate all the hard work and the tough discussions and the feedback and the understanding of where the policy sits for one of our reserves, but not for all, but this one specifically. And I just want to acknowledge the determination to get a positive outcome in spite of the difficult challenges and the tough conversations that took place, so it benefits Nelson as a whole. I just want to come back to, I know it's about that, but I just want to come back to the White Ferns. Positive female role models. How often do we get the opportunity in New Zealand for sports to have positive female role models to help encourage and help facilitate the change of behaviour or the team involvement or the engagement of some of our most vulnerable people within our community? So yes, we're talking about one matter, but the positive outcome. And I'm actually going to come back to the news the other night where Eden Carson talked about how her coach, who is a White Fern down in Otago, is now in the same team, and she has worked hard to achieve that. And the enthusiasm, the positiveness, the absolutely bubbling personality that came through for the opportunity to represent our country and to provide positive role models to others within our community at a time where families have been struggling, where families have been restricted, and where not all opportunities are available for women or young girls to participate. And I think that over all of this is part of the positive outcome that our region can be participating in. So they have won their games just against South Africa. They did have a draw and they did have a loss, but the games are coming up, and I think the White Ferns deserve the credit to come to Nelson and engage with what they are. So I believe that, putting this aside, that the opportunity that is provided by Sophie Devine, Susie Bates, I could list them all, to our region to provide that positive atmosphere and encouragement and the engagement of our community and families is well worth the exemption on this account because of how far we got into the situation. But going forward, this needs to be at the forefront of any events that are held at Saxton, and any international events or negotiations that anybody does on behalf of Saxton Field need to put this as the front of the conversation around the alcohol and the harm that it has.
Thank you, Councillor Brand. Councillor Hodgson, then Councillor Anderson.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Rohan. Firstly, just a huge acknowledgement to both our Chief Executive and also to all those parties involved in these conversations, because I know it's been difficult. It's been a busy week, but also in the lead up to this as well, there's been many conversations over the last few months. So I want to acknowledge that, and I think it speaks to the huge opportunity that these events are for Nelson. I don't want to reflect too much on the last 3.5 years, but I think that what we've seen is a lot of pain and a lot of sacrifice has been made by many people, and we've seen social issues and harm come about as a result of some of that. And I think this is an opportunity to both inspire young people, to bring people together, to give us something to celebrate. And we're seeing that come out of the woodwork in so many ways. You know, I've got the Mask Carnival tomorrow, a whole arts festival happening right now. And I'm just, to be honest, quite frankly, excited for all the things that are starting to kick back up. But I do just want to touch on that word of confidence. Over the past week, for me, I'm not super invested or involved in cricket, but I've had a lot of people come and talk to me about the knock to confidence that this uncertainty has brought about. And so I think as a council, if we can reaffirm our support for all those stakeholders that are involved in this, whether that's people that want to be attending the games, whether that's young people that want to be inspired by them, whether that's our local businesses, accommodation providers, restaurants that actually just need that little boost or quite significant boost. I just want to reaffirm that we've got their back.
Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, thank you through the Deputy Mayor. Again, I also acknowledge all the difficult position, the amazing work staff have been doing. Asahi owns Peroni in Carlsberg, so discerning drinks. They also do RTDs, Vodka Cruiser, Woodstock Woodies. So I know these brands quite well. I go to the beach with my kids and we always take a bag and I generally fill them up with these cans. couple of weeks ago, I cleared out St. Joseph's playground of box of woodies. This event would be awesome for Nelson, and I love stuff. It has been, among other things, it's been mentioned it'd be inspirational to youth. When I was 16, David Boone drank 52 beers on a single flight. I was playing under 19 rugby, so we'd have keg parties every weekend, and that was awesome. The life expectancy of someone with fetal alcohol syndrome is 34. I've worked with these kids. They reckon we've got around 46,000 New Zealanders suffering from this, costing around 690 million a year. Asahi lobbied against fetal alcohol syndrome mandatory warning labels. They said these changes are a substantial cost for labelling scheme, which is directed at the very small percentage of pregnant women who are not already aware or choose to ignore the advice that it's safest not to consume alcohol while pregnant. So ignore the advice. If New Zealanders followed this advice, alcohol revenue would drop by 38%. The industry spends 21 million a year in sports advertising for a reason. I've been told by friends to be on council, you need a council and billboards, you need a massive ego, and that bothers me. And so whenever something bothers me, I have to think about it a lot. So I've been thinking about this decision and umming and ahhing, but I haven't really swayed my position. I spend much of my week engaging with a very different demographic than most. I've almost daily interactions and serious conversations with people in communities affected by this Class A carcinogen. Yeah, the end. Thank you, Matty. Councillor Stallard.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I think it's important to address a few what I regard as misconceptions around this issue. And the first is that, the decision around whether these games go ahead lies with Nelson City Council. That's obviously not the case. New Zealand Cricket makes that decision, and they've decided to tie the games to in-ground alcohol advertising. And it's quite clear in the previous report before us from last week, Central Districts Cricket has replied that without this major sponsor, New Zealand Cricket would withdraw the games from the region. So they're making that decision. There's been talk also about reputational damage. I do question, why we are here, whether we are here to bring about change and decide on our values and our principles and the policies that they feed through into to defend them, or whether we are going to bend at the slightest breeze that blows or when money is put on the table. We are being asked to vote on this issue again today, 7 days since we last voted, even though we haven't spoken at all with New Zealand Cricket. There's in my view, no meaningful new information on the table. Negotiations with City Cricket are ongoing, yet to yield any advances or alternative options. I do wonder, I can't help but get the feeling to be told that, well, we don't really have any new information on the table, but we're not sure that the right decision was made last week. We'd like you to vote again on that to find the right decision. That's just the feeling I get from what has unfolded over the past 7 days. And I think it's important to highlight that New Zealand Cricket have made it clear that they're willing to pack up the games completely and go somewhere else at this late stage with all the inconvenience that brings, for the sole reason that at another venue, they'll be able to make money by placing alcohol advertising in front of a family-friendly crowd that will include many young people and school children. Now, I find that position to be untenable, and it's out of step with community expectations around alcohol advertising at sporting events. And the most recent poll showed that 68%.
Sorry, there is a point of order. Just checking through the chair that's not being read from a pre-written speech.
I think that's a point of order.
My concern is it's showing that a pre-decision's been made before coming to the table.
I'm sorry, Councillor Skinner, that's not a point of order under our standing orders.
Thank you.
Standing order.
Indeed, the previous
Sorry,
survey
I've made my ruling, Councillor Skinner, and I'll pass back to Councillor.
showed that 68% of the New Zealand public support a prohibition of all alcohol sponsorship of sporting events. So there's a community expectation that we can protect young people from the clearly demonstrated harm of alcohol advertising. Indeed, some countries prohibit all alcohol sponsorship of sport. France, Norway, Croatia. There's been complete silence from New Zealand cricket on this issue. This is quite a major issue. No comment whatsoever, to my knowledge. That to me indicates a lack of commitment to resolving the issue, and it feeds the false narrative that the question of whether the events will go ahead in Nelson sits solely with the decision by Nelson City Council. Now, I object to that narrative, and I would have hoped that New Zealand cricket would show some leadership in dealing with this issue, and silence is not leadership.
I'm sorry, Councillor Stallard, unfortunately, I do have to do a point of order misrepresentation here, in that a number of the statements are going above and beyond what has been presented to us, particularly regarding New Zealand cricket's position in relation to their willingness to take the games elsewhere. The fact is we haven't, as a result of them being in India, haven't been able to engage on whether it is around contractual obligations, what their legal position is within this. And so I would just really ask that you keep to the facts that have been presented, because we are straying into a territory that as a chair I'm uncomfortable with, and the Chief Executive is flagging to me his discomfort on these matters as well.
Can I respond or not?
No, that is...
Okay, that's fine, thank you. So,
just a quick follow, are you giving permission to read from a pre-written speech?
Councillor Skinner, I've ruled on your point of order. There's no space to reopen that, and I have ruled against your point of order. I'm fine with Councillor Stallard. If he is reading, where my concern is just around making sure that we're keeping within the bounds of debates that we have signed up to.
Thank you. Yes, I would love to see the discussion around New Zealand cricket, respecting council's policy and the right of young people to attend a sporting event without alcohol advertising. I don't support in-ground alcohol advertising, but I do support council's responsible and evidence-based policy around this, and therefore I don't support recommendation 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stallard. Is there further debate on this item? Otherwise, one moment. Otherwise, we will head across to Councillor Rollo for his right of reply.
I won't use my right of reply. I think in my opening comments I did express how I felt about this cricket, and I don't have anything to add. And happy for the vote to be taken.
All right, I've had both a request for it to be taken in part and a request for a division. Just on a practical basis, some of these resolutions sit together. Actually, most follow on from resolution 2. So with the council's permission, we will take resolutions 1 and 3 together as actually it's really I can read it in 2 different ways, and I'll take your guidance as we can take 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 together, or 2, 4, 5 and 6 together.
I'm requesting that resolution 2 be taken separately from all of the others.
All of the others?
Yeah.
My only concern is that resolutions 4, 5 and 6 directly relate to the decision of resolution 2, but you'd still like it taken separately. Councillor Skinner, do you want to divide on both 1, 3, 4, 5 and 6 and two separately? Or just two? Or just one?
Division for each vote on this topic.
All right. So, can I ask if we can receive the report first, just for the GAs? We've moved and seconded, so I'll put the resolution that we received the report. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, that motion is carried. We now move into a division on resolution number 2. Aye.
Can people just use their microphone?
I use my microphone. I won't shout. Councillor Anderson.
No.
Councillor Bench is absent. Councillor Brand.
Yes.
Councillor Courtney.
Aye.
Councillor Hodgson.
Aye.
Councillor Packy.
Aye.
Councillor Rainey on Zoom. Lost connection. Councillor Rollo.
Aye.
Councillor Sanson.
No.
Councillor Skinner.
Aye.
Councillor Stallard.
No.
Okay, so we have 7 in favour and 3 against.
I'll just need one moment. All right, that resolution is carried. We move on to resolutions 3, 4, 5, and 6. Is a division still wanted on these ones? Yes, all right, we'll move into a division on these resolutions.
Just 3 on its own?
3, 4, 5, and 6.
3, 4, 5, and 6. 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, resolutions 3, 4, 5, and 6. Councillor Hodgson.
Aye.
Have we got Councillor Rainey back online yet or not? No. Councillor Courtney.
Aye.
Councillor Packy.
Can I go Pucky? Aye.
Councillor Skinner.
Aye.
Councillor Brand.
Yes.
Councillor Stallard.
Yes.
Acting Mayor O'Neill Stevens.
Aye.
Councillor Sanson.
Aye.
Councillor Rollo.
Aye.
Councillor Anderson.
Aye.
Those resolutions are also carried, which brings us to the end of this item. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge councillors for the way that debate was conducted. I think it was a very constructive way to handle what is a really challenging issue. So acknowledge all of you. We will now take a 10-minute break. But before we do that, we will be moving into confidential so we can conclude the confidential business. Moved, Councillor Courtney, seconded, Councillor Brand. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
That motion is carried. We are heading into confidential. Back at 11:45.